I want to start with a hard truth. Most people who experience harassment don't remember the first comment. They remember the moment they realized no one is going to stop this for me. If that's ever been you, I want you to know you're not alone and you are not overreacting, too sensitive, or making a big deal out of nothing. Harassment is not just part of the culture. It's harm. It changes how we walk into rooms, how we do our work, and sometimes how we see ourselves. In my research and conversations, I've seen a pattern. People are not just hurt by what was said or done. They are deeply wounded by the silence around it, the nervous laughter, the just ignore it, the that's how he is. I want to talk about how we deal with harassment in a way that protects our dignity instead of eroding it, not with perfect courage, but with real, shaky human courage, naming what is actually happening so your brain stops trying to file harassment under normal. When we talk about dealing with harassment, this is where we have to start, because if you cannot name it, you cannot respond to it in a way that honors you. What most of us do at first is we explain it away. Maybe I misunderstood. He jokes like that with everybody. I'm being dramatic. Your brain is literally trying to move this experience into the normal folder so you can stay safe, stay liked, stay employed, stay included. And the problem is, when we normalize what is not normal, we abandon ourselves to protect the comfort or power of someone else. I want to be really clear and really practical here. Harassment is not someone being a little rude or someone you don't like. Harassment is a pattern of unwanted behavior, comments, messages, touches, jokes, looks, or power moves that make you feel unsafe, humiliated, objectified, or targeted. It can be sexual. It can be about your gender, race, religion, disability, appearance, or identity. It can be loud and obvious, or it can be quiet and persistent, like a faucet that never fully turns off. One of the things I've seen over and over is that people who are being harassed start by questioning themselves instead of the behavior. Did I encourage this somehow? Am I being too sensitive? Other people aren't saying anything, so maybe it's just me. That self-doubt is not a personality flaw. It's a survival strategy. Many of us were taught that being nice is safer than being clear. So we smile, we laugh, we brush it off. On the outside, we're performing, I'm fine. And on the inside, our bodies are screaming, this is not okay. Naming what is actually happening is the moment you bring those two worlds together. It might sound like, that comment was not just a joke. It was sexual and it was unwanted. That message was not flirting. It was pressure. That pattern of touching my shoulder, standing too close, or blocking the door is not friendly. It is threatening. I know even just imagining saying those words can make your heart race, but I'm not asking you to say them out loud yet. I'm asking you to be honest with yourself first, because your brain cannot protect you from what it refuses to see. There is also this very human tendency to downgrade what we go through because we have seen or heard about worse. Well, at least they didn't touch me. Well, it's not like they assaulted me. Well, other people have been through way more. Here's the truth. Comparing your pain to someone else's pain does not make anyone safer. It just keeps you quiet. If it is crossing your boundaries, if it is making you feel small, scared, or trapped, it matters. It doesn't have to reach some imaginary harassment Olympics level to count. Another thing that gets in the way of naming harassment is loyalty. Maybe the person harassing you is someone you've known a long time, or someone who has helped you professionally, or someone everyone else seems to love. That creates this internal conflict. How can this person be both kind and harmful? The answer is because people are complicated. Someone can be charming in public and harmful in private. Someone can be great at their job and terrible with boundaries. Naming harassment doesn't require you to turn them into a monster. It just requires you to stop turning yourself into the problem. From a research perspective, I've seen again and again that having clear language changes everything. When people finally say the words, I was harassed, this is harassment, there is usually this mix of grief and relief. Grief because now you have to face what really happened. Relief because you are no longer gaslighting yourself. So how do we actually do this in real life? First, we tune into the body. Your body often knows before your brain is ready to label it. Do you feel your stomach drop when this person walks into the room? Do your shoulders tense? Do you laugh, but it feels hollow? Those are data points, not proof, but signals. Second, we describe the behavior as neutrally and specifically as possible, even if it is just in a notebook or a notes app. On Monday, he commented on my body twice after I said I was uncomfortable. On Tuesday, she sent 3 late-night messages with sexual content after I didn't respond. On Wednesday, they stood in the doorway and blocked my exit while making comments about my appearance. When you write it down, pattern replaces confusion. You start to see, oh, this is not a one-time awkward moment. This is a repeated behavior. Third, we name the impact. I feel unsafe. I feel disrespected. I dread coming here. Because harassment is not defined only by what they say or do. It is also defined by how it affects your sense of safety and dignity. And look, I know there's a part of you that might still be thinking, what if I'm wrong? Here's a reframe that helps. It is okay to take your discomfort seriously before you have perfect evidence. Being cautious about your safety is not the same as accusing someone publicly. Naming it to yourself is about alignment, not punishment. When you stop forcing your brain to label harassment as normal, you take the first step out of confusion and into clarity. And clarity is what you will need for the next pieces. Understanding the shame it creates, setting boundaries, reaching out for support, and ultimately reclaiming your story. So this first step is not about being brave on a stage. It's about being honest in your own heart and saying, even if it's just in a whisper at first, this is not okay. And I am not going to pretend it is normal, understanding the shame and self-doubt it creates, and why your nervous system reacts the way it does. When harassment happens, most people think the damage is only in the moment. The comment, the touch, the message, the look. But what I've seen over and over is that the deeper wound is what happens inside you afterward. The shame, the self-doubt, the way your body suddenly feels like it's not entirely yours or not entirely safe in certain spaces or around certain people. Shame is that voice that doesn't say you experienced something bad. Shame says you are the problem. You are weak. You are overreacting. You should have handled it better. And harassment, especially when it's repeated or minimized by others, is like miracle grow for shame. Let me walk through what this actually looks like in real life. You get a comment that crosses a line. Your body reacts first. Maybe your heart jumps. Maybe your stomach drops. Maybe your face gets hot, or your hands shake a little. That's your nervous system picking up on a threat. It's not you being dramatic. It's biology. We are wired to scan for danger. When someone invades your boundaries or uses power to humiliate or sexualize you, your body goes alert. Something is wrong. Now, here's where it gets tricky. If you were in a dark alley and a stranger lunged toward you, your body's reaction would make sense to you. You'd think, of course I'm scared. But when harassment happens in a place where you're supposed to be safe, at work, in your family, at school, in a religious space, your brain gets confused. It goes, wait, this is my colleague, my relative, my leader, my teacher. Everyone else seems okay. Maybe I'm misreading this. And instead of directing the alarm outward toward the behavior, you turn it inward toward yourself. That's when we start asking, what did I do? Did I smile too much? Was I too friendly? Should I have been more serious? Shame loves questions like that because they keep you stuck in the belief that if you were different, this would not be happening. It gives you a false sense of control. If I caused it, maybe I can fix it. But that same belief also keeps you quiet. If it's your fault, why would you speak up? From a nervous system perspective, a lot of people go into freeze. We talk a lot about fight or flight, but freeze is incredibly common when there is harassment, especially when there is a power difference. Freeze sounds like I laughed even though I hated it, or I just stood there and didn't say anything, or I couldn't move. I want you to hear this. Freezing is not consent. Freezing is not agreement. Freezing is your body trying to protect you when it calculates that fighting or fleeing might make things worse. So when your brain later says, "Why didn't you do something?" I want you to understand you did do something. Your nervous system chose what it thought was the safest option in that moment. Now add another layer. When you try to share what happened and someone responds with, "Are you sure?" Or, "I'm sure they didn't mean it like that," or, "Just ignore it," your shame gets louder, your self-doubt gets deeper, and your nervous system learns a painful lesson. Not only am I not safe with this person, I am not safe to talk about not feeling safe. Over time, this can turn into chronic self-criticism. You start narrating your life through a lens of too much or not enough, too sensitive, not strong enough, too emotional, not professional enough. And harassment becomes not just an event, but a story about who you are allowed to be and how small you have to make yourself to belong. The research on trauma and chronic stress shows that when you are in environments where you regularly feel unsafe, your body does not fully come back to baseline. You might notice you are jumpier, more exhausted, more anxious, or more disconnected. You might start avoiding certain places or people, even if you cannot fully explain why. That's not weakness. That's your nervous system trying to navigate an environment that does not feel secure. So what do we do with all of this? First, we tell the truth about what shame is saying. We do not let it whisper unchallenged in the dark. You can literally write it down. Shame is telling me this is my fault. Shame is telling me I'm making a big deal out of nothing. Shame is telling me if I speak up, I'll regret it forever. Then we ask gently but clearly, is this actually true, or is this my fear protecting me from more pain? Most of the time, it is fear trying to keep you invisible so you won't be targeted again. The intention is protection. The impact is isolation. Second, we normalize the body's reaction. Instead of, "Why am I shaking? What's wrong with me?" we shift to, "Of course my hands are shaking. Something scary happened. My body is on my side." That small reframe starts to heal the split between your mind and your body. You stop seeing your body as a betrayer and start seeing it as an ally that's asking for safety. Third, we practice self-compassion instead of self-attack. And I know, self-compassion can sound like a soft, fluffy concept. But in this context, it is a radical act. It might sound like, I did the best I could with what I knew and what I had in that moment. Or, I froze because I felt scared and stuck. That makes sense. When you replace what is wrong with me with what happened to me, you move from shame to understanding. When you add, what support do I need now? You move from understanding to action, understanding the shame and self-doubt harassment creates, and the way your nervous system reacts does not magically fix the situation, but it does something incredibly important. It puts the blame where it belongs, on the behavior, not on your worth. And from that place, you are much more able to set boundaries, reach for support, and begin to reclaim your story instead of living inside someone else's harmful behavior. Setting and communicating clear boundaries, even when your voice is shaking. This is the part where a lot of us want to quietly exit the conversation and go rearrange a drawer somewhere instead. Boundaries sound strong and clean in theory, but in real life, they feel messy and terrifying, especially in the context of harassment. Because you are not just saying, "Please stop." You are saying, "I deserve respect," in a space where someone has already shown you they are willing to cross a line. Let me say this up front. A boundary is not a threat, a speech, or an attack. A boundary is a clear statement of what is okay and what is not okay for you, and what you will do to protect that line. It is about your behavior, not theirs. We cannot control whether people respect our boundaries, but we can control whether we keep abandoning them. When harassment is happening, your body is already on high alert. Remember that freeze response we talked about? That is one of the reasons boundaries feel so hard. Your nervous system is busy trying to keep you safe. Standing up and saying, "This is not okay," feels like walking straight toward danger. So if your voice shakes, if your heart pounds, if you feel like you might cry, that is not failure. That is courage, showing up in real time. Practically, a boundary around harassment usually has 3 pieces: naming the behavior, stating your limit, and describing what you will do. Do not comment on my body or appearance again. It is not appropriate. I am not comfortable with messages like that. Do not send them to me. Do not touch me. If you do it again, I will report it. Notice the language is simple and direct. No long explanations, no nervous laughter, no apologizing for having a boundary. You do not have to convince them that your feelings are valid. You are not applying for permission. You are stating reality. I know some of you might be thinking, if I say that, they will get angry. Or what if they say I'm overreacting? And that is real. That is why boundaries around harassment are so tied to safety and power. In some situations, speaking directly might put you at more risk. In those cases, a boundary can also look like creating distance, documenting what is happening, and going straight to a trusted authority or formal process without confronting the person yourself. Choosing not to engage directly does not mean you do not have boundaries. It means you are honoring your safety. One thing I have learned from years of hearing these stories is that rehearsing your boundary ahead of time helps. Saying it out loud to yourself or writing it in a notes app gives your brain a script when your body is in fight, flight, or freeze. Instead of trying to invent language in a moment of panic, you are reaching for something you have already practiced. Boundaries will almost always feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you were raised to be nice, easygoing, or low maintenance. When you start saying things like, do not speak to me like that, everything in you might want to soften it. I mean, if that's okay, sorry, but here is the truth. Clarity is kind. Vagueness protects the other person from discomfort and leaves you unprotected. Clear does not mean cruel. Clear means honest. It is also important to remember that the outcome is not the measure of your courage. You can set a boundary and still need to report. You can set a boundary and still decide to leave that environment. You can set a boundary and still feel shaken. The success of a boundary is not whether the other person suddenly becomes enlightened. The success is that you stopped silently participating in your own harm. So if your voice shakes, let it shake. If your hands tremble, let them tremble. You can be terrified and still be clear. You can feel small in the moment and still take up more space than you ever have before by saying, this is not okay for me. And every time you choose that clarity, even in tiny ways, you are slowly teaching your nervous system a new story. Not just, I survived that, but I stood up for myself even while I was scared, reaching for safe people and formal support systems instead of carrying it alone. Harassment has this sneaky way of convincing you that you're on your own. Even when you are surrounded by people, it can feel like you are trapped in a glass box. You can see everyone, they can see you, but no one really knows what is happening inside. And shame loves that. Shame thrives in secrecy, silence, and judgment. So one of the most powerful moves you can make is to open that box and let someone trustworthy in. Safe people are not perfect people. Safe people are the ones who respond to your pain with belief, care, and clarity instead of minimizing, blaming, or making it about themselves. When you share something as vulnerable as harassment, you do not need someone to play detective or devil's advocate. You need someone who can say, I am so sorry this happened to you. It is not your fault. How can I support you? If the very idea of telling someone makes your chest tighten, that makes sense. For many of us, there is a deep fear. What if they don't believe me? Or what if they think I'm overreacting? Or what if this makes my life harder? That fear is not irrational. A lot of people have been dismissed or punished for speaking up. So when I say reach for safe people, I do not mean tell everyone. I mean be intentional. Choose someone who has shown you, even in small ways, that they can hold hard conversations without turning away. Sometimes that first safe person is a friend or a family member. Sometimes it is a colleague you trust, someone who has hinted that they see what is going on. Sometimes it is a counselor, therapist, or support line where you can talk without worrying about office politics or family dynamics. Saying the words out loud, even if your voice cracks, is a way of saying to yourself, My experience matters enough to be heard. Then there are formal support systems. And I know that phrase alone can make your stomach flip. HR, reporting channels, legal processes, official complaints. These systems are not perfect. They are run by humans inside cultures that sometimes protect power more than people, but they also exist because harassment is not just a personal issue. It is a safety and rights issue. You should not have to manage it only with private coping and personal boundaries. Formal support might look like reporting to a supervisor if they are not the one causing the harm. It might be going to human resources or a designated harassment officer. It might be documenting everything and reaching out to a lawyer, a union representative, or an advocacy group that specializes in workplace or institutional harassment. It might mean contacting a hotline or organization that can walk you through your options in your country or region. Here is something I want you to hold on to. Using these systems is not you making trouble. It is you refusing to carry someone else's harmful behavior in your body and your mind as if it is your private burden. You are allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to expect protection. You are allowed to say, this requires more than just me. And yes, there is risk. There is almost always some level of uncertainty or fear involved in speaking up. That is why you do not have to do it all in one leap. Sometimes the first step is just telling a trusted friend and asking them to sit with you while you write down what happened. Sometimes it is calling a confidential line to learn about your rights before you decide anything. Sometimes it is talking to a therapist to process your fear and shame so you feel less alone inside your own head. One of the most healing sentences I have heard people say is, once I stopped keeping it secret, it felt less heavy. The situation might still be hard. The process might still be long, but not being the only person who knows the full story changes the way you carry it. Instead of being swallowed by it, you are sharing its weight. You are not weak for needing other people. You are not dramatic for wanting formal protection. Reaching out is not a sign that you failed to handle it alone. It is a sign that you understand something profound. You were never meant to carry this kind of harm by yourself. Reclaiming your story after harassment so this experience becomes something that happened to you, not the definition of who you are. When harassment tears through your life, it does not just disrupt your days, it tries to rewrite your story. Suddenly, chapters that used to be about your work, your dreams, your relationships, your growth, they start to feel like they are all secretly about this one thing that was done to you. The emails, the meetings, the hallway, the messages, the place you used to feel proud to walk into. Now they are all colored by that experience. And if we are not careful, the story in your head quietly shifts from I was harassed to I am the person who let this happen, or I am the person who could not stop it, or I am the person who is now broken. That is what shame does. It takes an event and turns it into an identity. Reclaiming your story is about taking that pen back. You do not erase what happened. This is not about pretending it was not that bad or forcing yourself to move on before you are ready. Reclaiming your story means you place the harassment where it actually belongs, as a painful, real, significant chapter, not the title of the whole book. One way we do this is by changing the language we use with ourselves. Notice the difference between I am weak and I went through something that left me exhausted and scared. Or I am broken versus I am healing from something that deeply hurt me. Those little shifts are not just semantics. They are about telling the truth in a way that keeps your worth intact. Another part of reclaiming your story is honoring what you did to survive. When you look back, it is so easy to focus on what you did not do. I did not speak up fast enough. I did not walk away sooner. I did not shut it down perfectly. But if we slow down, we can ask a different question. What did I actually do given how scared and stuck I felt? Maybe you froze because your body thought that was the safest option. Maybe you laughed it off to de-escalate. Maybe you documented quietly. Maybe you told one person. Maybe you just got through each day. Surviving is not pretty, but it is still survival. And when you recognize that, the story shifts from I failed to I did what I could with what I had. Reclaiming your story can also mean choosing what you want this experience to teach you about yourself. Not what it says about your value, but what it reveals about your strength, your boundaries, your capacity for empathy. For some people, that looks like becoming more vocal about injustice. For others, it looks like promising themselves, I will never shrink myself to make someone else comfortable again. For some, it means seeking therapy or support and building a kinder relationship with themselves than they have ever had before. This part is really important. Healing does not mean you never feel triggered again. It does not mean you suddenly feel brave and powerful all the time. Healing is often quiet and slow. It might look like being able to walk into certain spaces without your chest tightening quite as much. It might be noticing that when you think about what happened, you feel sad or angry, but not shattered. It might be catching that shame voice and saying, no, that is not my story anymore. And sometimes reclaiming your story means literally telling it in your own words on your own terms to people who have earned the right to hear it. Not for their approval, but as a way of saying, this is what happened, but it is not all of who I am. The act of speaking it in a safe place can pull it out of the dark corners of your mind and into the light where it can be held, witnessed, and slowly integrated instead of silently poisoning you. You are allowed to have a life that is bigger than the worst thing someone did to you. You are allowed to have joy, love, work, creativity, silly moments, deep laughter, and ordinary days that are not dominated by this story. Harassment may be a chapter in your life, but it does not get to be the ending line. You are more than what you survived. If we zoom out for a moment, this whole journey we've been walking through together is really about one thing: refusing to abandon yourself in the face of harm. You learned to name what is actually happening, so your brain stops trying to shove harassment into the normal box. You started to understand the shame and self-doubt it creates and why your nervous system reacted the way it did. You practice the idea of boundaries, even if right now they still feel like words that would only come out with a shaky voice. You reached, at least in your imagination, for safe people and support systems so you do not have to carry this alone. And you began to consider that your story is bigger than this one painful chapter, that you can reclaim it and write forward from here. None of this is about being fearless. I do not trust fearlessness. I trust people who are honest about being scared, confused, angry, or tired, and still choose in small ways to stand on their own side. That might be you writing down what is happening. It might be you telling one person. It might be you filing a report, finding a therapist, setting a boundary, or simply quietly deciding, I am no longer going to call this normal. If you are listening to this and thinking, I am not ready for all of that, that is okay. You do not have to do everything at once. You are allowed to go step by step, breath by breath. Sometimes courage looks like taking a huge, visible stand. Sometimes courage looks like waking up tomorrow and saying, I will not talk to myself like I am the problem. Harassment is real. The harm is real. But so is your strength. So is your right to safety, to dignity, to workplaces and homes and communities where you do not have to brace yourself every time someone walks into the room. You are not asking for too much. You are asking for what every human being deserves. My hope is that when you leave this space, you hear a different sentence playing in your mind. Not, what is wrong with me, but I am worth protecting. Not, I should have handled it better, but I did the best I could, and from here I can choose differently. You are not alone in this. You are not broken. You are already braver than you think. Good luck.